the praises of our God. The rocks cry out if we don't shout the praises of our God. There's nothing that can stand against the praises of our God. We will defeat the enemy with the praises of our God. Oh, sing praise to our God, for his name is worthy, worthy. Oh, sing praise to our God, for our God is worthy, worthy. Come on, let's sing this together. Sing, we come alive. We come alive to magnify the praises of our God. The rocks cry out if we don't shout the praises of our God. There's nothing that can stand against the praises of our God. We will defeat the enemy with the praises of our God. Oh, sing praise to our God, for his name is worthy, worthy. Oh, sing praise to our God, for our God is worthy, worthy. His praise in us is glorious. Shout it out, make it loud, make it louder. No other one is like our God. Lift it high, lift him up, lift him higher. His praise in us is glorious. Shout it out, make it loud, make it louder. No other one is like our God. Lift it high, lift him up, lift him higher. Oh, sing praise to our God, for his name is worthy, worthy. Oh, sing praise to our God, for our God is worthy, worthy. Oh, sing praise to our God, for his name is worthy, worthy. Oh, sing praise to our God, for our God is worthy, worthy. Whoa.
We serve a great God. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my truth till I met you. You called my Jesus, when I met you, yeah, you called my name, and I ran out of that day, out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. Yeah. When the sun sets free, it's free indeed. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy. The chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, but you called me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. Now the future, my eyes are open. 'Cause when you called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day.
Sunday, we pause the second Sunday of every month, no matter what series we're in, and we talk about marriage. We believe three things drive our marriage ministry here. We believe marriage should be honored, enjoyed, and prioritized. Hebrews 13:4 says marriage should be honored by all and the marriage bed kept pure. So we believe whether you're young or old, single or married, every single follower of Jesus is called to esteem marriage as, I'll pick those up in a second, as highly valuable. We also believe that marriage should be enjoyed. Comedian Chris Rock said, you really only have two choices in life. You can be single and lonely or married and bored. I think he's wrong. I believe marriage should be enjoyed, and that's Ecclesiastes 9:7-9, where it says, enjoy life with your wife whom you love. So grab a nice meal, enjoy life together. And then we also believe that marriage should be prioritized within the home. Genesis 2:24 says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. We believe it's the responsibility of parents. As we dedicated children this morning, our children should leave home as adults, not on a journey to become one. We believe the quickest way to eradicate prolonged adolescence, and prolonged adolescence defined as too much privilege, not enough responsibility. We believe the quickest way you do that is by eradicating the kid-centered home. And we believe the best way to eradicate the kid-centered home, we're going to start real simple. We believe that mom and dad, husband and wife, should have a regular date night. We have provided over 1,000 questions, fill in the blanks, conversation starters for you to download from our website that you can take to begin having guided conversations on your date night. So my encouragement to you is leave your children at home once a week and go out. And you're like, but they cry every time we do that. That's good for them. That is good for them. Allow them to cry. There's a lot of reasons kids cry. So I don't know if y'all met. How many of you met online? Let me see your hands. And they always go like this. And just 67 years of marriage, I want you to know it's perfectly legal what they did meeting online. But here's what we're talking about today. We're talking about catching the foxes. So singles and teens. As we talk about this message, and every time we talk about marriage, you're thinking, okay, I'm not there yet. This is the perfect message for you to zero in on as you begin to think through young, budding love, and as you begin to form relationships. Your vineyard of marriage is not yet planted, but as you head towards it, this is one of those messages, simple point, main point, one point, but to take it deep into your heart and to understand what the Scripture teaches us today so that you will know how to guard your marriage and go the distance. I want to start with three trends that we're seeing in the church today and in our country. These are three marriage trends. First trend we call sliding versus deciding. And sociologist out of the University of Denver, Scott Stanley, his whole blog is called Sliding versus Deciding. And his passion is relationship formation and how young people today are forming relationships and how all of us are forming relationships. We don't like to make decisions anymore. And we feel that if we don't make decisions about the relationship, then we'll be safer. If we don't make a solid decision like traditional relationship formation, and we have, now this is a mouthful, but traditional relationship formation milestones where we made decisions about life and about dating and about marriage and about family. Young people today and couples today are just kind of sliding past all of those decisions. Many of you remember when you met the one that you're with today. I remember meeting Amy on a blind date. I decided that night, bow, bow, chickie, chickie, bow, bow, she's the one. I am marrying this woman. I told my buddy that I'm going to marry her, and he's like, this is soon. I go, no, I made the decision. I'm going to marry her. But then I had to make another decision, and it was to get the guts up to ask her out on a date. There was a blind date that I didn't set up, and so I asked her out and made that decision. And then as we dated a little bit, I decided I'm going to ask her to be my wife. And I had to go back to Fremont, Nebraska, which this is part of traditional relationship formation. The reason we have parents, we want to involve our parents in these big milestone decisions. And all God's people said. So I had to go back to the Norwegian home of Dennis Freitag, 6'2", full-blooded Norwegian, pretty much a Viking. I walk into his house and I say, Mr. Freitag, now I had to get the guts up. I would like to marry your daughter. To which he said, you betcha. I said, only under one condition. He said, what's that? You allow me to pay for her senior year of college. To which he said, you betcha. So I made that decision. We made the decision. She had to say yes. That was a decision. Then I had to, with her, we made the decision to set a date. We made all these decisions. That's not happening today. What's happening today is you're at dinner, you think he's cute, you think she's cute, you date a little bit, you have a few meals together, and then you decide to go home with him and sleep with him. Then you allow that to happen a little bit. Now we're in the sliding part. You allow that to happen a little bit, and then you went to work enough times from his place or from her place, you decide it would just make sense to have a drawer. I'll just have my own drawer here. Then I'll have a closet, and then I'll have a dresser. And so you slid, and then pretty soon, a year or two go by, you bought a car together, you signed a lease on an apartment together. And whenever I work with a cohabitating couple, and let me tell you, I know many cohabitating couples here. You're living together outside of marriage. Again, I'm asking that you put all of your beliefs and all of your ideas, because this may be coming to light for the very first time, that you just slid past all these decisions. The question that I would ask you, if you wouldn't have slid into all of these arrangements, would you marry this guy or would you marry this girl? And the question I often get is no. We didn't put the time into investigating one another's character. And this is why sex outside of marriage, sex before marriage, physical intimacy before marriage complicates things. It complicates, and it brings you to sliding. Healthy relationships. Let me tell you, 67 years of marriage is a decision. It is a decision that they made and they have stuck with. And so these milestones of adulthood, right? Leave home, finish school, get a job, get married, start a family. Those are the 5 milestones that have been true of every generation. Your generation, my generation, the millennials that are in the room. The only difference is their generation, 67 years of marriage, completed those 5 milestones in a very short period of time, if not in the same week. They were fast. Now with prolonged adolescence, we've stretched them out, and we've told kids, you don't have to grow up. You don't have to become a man. You don't have to become a woman. And what we've done is we've put them on this track called prolonged adolescence, and we tell them after they leave our home, you don't have to become an adult right away. Go on a journey to adulthood and try to figure out who you are. And we use this term independence, but independence has become a socially acceptable term for selfishness. We're sending kids out of the kid-centered home to go live by and for themselves. And they're just sliding past. We believe part of honoring marriage and prioritizing marriage, enjoying marriage, is that we decide. We make decisions. There's another trend that you see played out on Facebook almost every single week. It's called dating while divorcing. And this is a tough one because a picture is posted. The divorce papers haven't even been drawn up, or they've been signed, but the ink hasn't dried. And now there's a new picture. I found a new woman. I found a new man. Actually, I found him way before it's actually caused the divorce. And now I want you, follower of Jesus, to hit the like button. I want you to hit the like button and support my new relationship. And I'm telling you, I'm one pastor who will not. I will not. You're like, well, when will you? Listen, don't bring a date to your wife's funeral. Don't bring a date to your husband's funeral. Your children are mourning the death of your marriage. And for you to begin dating is no different than bringing a date to your spouse's funeral. The kids are trying to process it, family and friends are trying to process it, and then they go on Facebook frustrated with us for not saying, yeah, we're just so glad you're happy. No, we're mourning a death, and it's the death of the marriage. And when you read 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, what does it say? We mourn as followers of Jesus with hope. Why do we mourn with hope? Because Jesus died and rose again. And we believe that Jesus breathes life into dead people, and we believe Jesus breathes life into dead marriages. So while you're running off dating someone new, I'm still holding out hope for your marriage. I am mourning with hope. I had someone a few months back, they came up to me after a service at another church, and they said, I'd like you to meet, the girl that I'm with, and they're living together. And he said, we had an affair. I'm with her. I love her. My wife and 3 kids, I left them, and I'm sitting there hearing the whole story, and she's not saying anything. She's emotional. She's crying, and he's saying, I don't know what to do. I said, it's easy. I know exactly what you should do. I don't have to pray about it. I don't have to think about it. And they're going, well, he's going to give us good advice. I go, you know what you need to do? You need to leave this woman and go be reconciled to your wife. And this is why we have security. I backed away. Eagle one, needing some help here. But they said what? They knew it. They know the right thing. But where are the people that are standing up and proclaiming it? Where are you? And some of you are like, I know it's my kids. They call and they want me to be happy for them. Listen, advocate for their marriage, not just them. Advocate for their marriage. And it's not about one guy here or one gal there that are proclaiming this or being prophetic in marriage. We need all followers of Jesus to be advocates for marriage. Saying, I believe this can happen. I believe you can hold out hope. If you're here today, you're divorced and you're in a new marriage, I don't want you to listen to this message and go, totally blew it. I'm a mess. Listen, we just declared the gospel of Jesus. He breathes life into dead people. A marriage failed and you're in a new marriage, you take everything we're talking about today and you apply it to your marriage now. Don't take this message and go on a guilt trip with it. But dating while divorcing, I'm one pastor who will not celebrate your new relationship while I'm still in mourning over the death of your marriage. And then there's another one. You think grandma and grandpa's marriage is safe? Nope. That's the third one, graying divorce. 50 years ago in our country, the divorce rate for those over the age of 50 was 2.8%. In 1990, the divorce rate for those over the age of 50 was 1 in 10 divorces. Today, it is now 1 in 4 divorces. Takes place in couples over the age of 50. You probably saw this last year in the New York Times. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It's called graying divorce. Grandma and grandpa, the kids leave home, and then they decide, nope, we're done. We're going to find someone new. And now even the long-standing marriages, grandma and grandpa are saying no, and they're moving on. And I want to tell you, some of you, you're like, well, what are you going to do, Ted, after the kids leave home? You know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to Disney World. Amy and I, we've got big plans. Raise your hand if you got huge plans after your kids leave home. I got them. I got a journal that's that thick. What's that, Dad? It's what I'm doing with your mom when I'm done with you. One day you'll no longer be my responsibility. And let me tell you something. You're like, should I leave them something? Yeah. Write them one last check before you die. Just make sure it bounces. I told Carson this morning, laying there with him, I said, I just want you to know something. We were watching Greg Laurie from California. He's doing a series right now called Happily Even After. And it's a message. It fits beautifully with what our church believes about marriage. And I just leaned over to Carson. He jumped in bed with me while everybody else was getting ready. We're the men in the house. We only need 5 minutes to get ready. Our ladies need more time. So we're just sitting there. I go, Carson, I just want you to know something. I plan on leaving you a little something when I die. But I just want you to know. I emphasize little something. I'm not leaving you big. And he goes, oh, okay. He couldn't care less about where this conversation was going because he gets everything handed to him on a silver platter. So I said, I'm not gonna. And he said, okay, all right. I go, I just want you to know I'm going to share and give the majority of it to your mom. Spend it because I said, Carson, we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time. So this is graying divorce. So you're like, the kids have left home. We've got nothing left. Welcome to Woodland Hills Family Church. We want to help you. We want to resource you. We want to equip you. We want to teach you in your marriage, no matter how long you've been married. Before you give up, before you quit, stick with it. So here's where we're going to start in the Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 4. It's the first time we see the daughters of Jerusalem in this text. If you're brand new to this book, this whole book, 8 chapters, it's a duet between Solomon and the Shulamite woman. We don't know a whole lot about the Shulamite woman other than the fact she is a simple country gal. And so she comes in and she expresses deep, intimate sexual desire, wanting to be with Solomon. And she proclaims that, and here's what the daughters of Jerusalem, they're the backup singers to this duet. And here's what they proclaim. We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. So I'll just say, of the 240 times in the Bible we see the word wine, this is one of them. We see vine and vineyard 173 times. So I just say it again for my Baptist friends. Wine used 240 times. We will praise your love more than wine. This is the desire of Woodland Hills, that every follower of Jesus in this place would be a backup singer to the duets all around them, even the duets not yet formed. So with our kids, when they come home, when you have your teenager come home and say, I'm in love, bad backup singing is, no, you're not. You don't know what love is. Right? And the mom, the passionate mom, I know what love is. Right? Love is what your father and I have. Right? Okay, no. Back down a notch. When your kids begin expressing desire, rejoice and delight in them, praise their love more than wine. This is tough for parents. This really, I get as a challenge for parents, but you go into chapter 2, what does she say? The Shulamite woman says, we will not arouse or awaken love before it's time. When is it right to arouse or awaken love physically? It's in chapter 3. It's a wedding. Wedding is when the marriage begins. It's when the vineyard now gets to experience the physical aspects of marriage. But the desire expressed, we've got to be good parents. I remember Corinne coming out when she was 5. I think so-and-so likes me. No, he doesn't. He is of his father, the devil, and a child of darkness. You stay away from him. I don't know him. I don't know his parents, but I'm sure they're no good for you. That's bad backup singing. Good backup singing is beginning, boy, I have an 8 and a 10-year-old, but I already know this day's here, but is beginning to picture a special future for their marriage. Is beginning to say, we will rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. So when a young person comes up to me and says, hey, I'm getting married, my first response is not, are you sure? That could ruin the rest of your life. You know what I'm going to do immediately when you tell me the news? Before I even know your story, before I know if you're cohabitating or if you're, I don't know your story. You know what I say? I will rejoice and delight in you and I'll praise your love more than wine. But then understand, right behind that will be a lot of questions. Before we head to a wedding, we're going to ask a lot of questions, probing deeply into your character. Character trumps chemistry when it comes to relationships. And so it's not just about how well we get along. It's about the character. 67 years doesn't happen through chemistry. 67 years happens because of character. That's where commitment flows from. So let's all be backup singers, no matter what your age, no matter what your season of life, married or single, preparing for marriage, coming out of a marriage, we will begin to rejoice and delight and praise love more than wine. Now you begin to see vineyard used a couple verses down, jump down to verse 6. And here's what we see. We see vineyard used 3 times in this book. This is the first 2 times that we see it. We see it used literally. And then we see, this is what I love about Hebrew poetry. Hebrew poetry then takes something literal and immediately on the next line turns it into a figurative statement referring to her body. So we're going to see it used to speak of an actual planted vineyard, and then we're going to see her use that same word picture to describe her body. And here's what it says. She begins to speak of the insecurity that a lot of women have, the insecurity of their bodies and the insecurity of their family history. Do not stare at me because I am dark. In that day, paleness was beauty. In that day, the women didn't go outside and work, so the more pale they were, you were attracted to that. And she's making that point right here. I'm darkened by the sun. My mother's sons, now we get into the family history, were angry with me. So now we have family tension, family conflict. All of us understand that. All of us have experienced that. And made me take care of the vineyards, the literal use there. My own vineyard I had to neglect. So I haven't taken care of myself. And this insecurity comes out throughout the first chapter that she's saying, listen, Solomon has his pick of women. He can choose anyone he wants, but there's just no way he's going to want me. And this is why this whole book builds towards exclusivity. Listen, that as you grow in your marriage and as you grow in your relationship formation, it should be growing stronger and stronger and stronger towards exclusivity. And baby, there ain't no one like you. All of these women, they ain't nothing. You are the one. Then you go into chapter 2, verse 15, and here's where we're going to spend our time this morning. We're going to see vineyard used to describe their marriage, the third use of it, the vineyard as a marriage. So it says, catch for us the foxes, and then doing good Bible study method here. Bible study method has 3 main parts. You have observation, you have interpretation, and then you have application. Well, to observe this text well, we're going to see it's not just catch any foxes, it's catch the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards, this relationship that's forming, this relationship that's budding, the vineyard that has been planted. We've got to take care of that which could come in and destroy it because it is in bloom. So I think about the young marriages in here, 1 week, it's like sprouts. You're at Sprouts. Some of you have been married a few years and your vineyard is pretty well established. But what we're looking at today is the wall around the vineyard and the predators that are seeking to come in and destroy the vineyard. And in that day, the vineyards were protected by large stone walls. So keeping out big foxes wasn't an issue. You just make the wall tall enough, no one can jump over it. You make the gate strong enough, the foxes won't get through it. The idea here is surveillance. It's going around the walls of your vineyard and finding the little openings that the little foxes can sneak through and begin trying to discover the damage that's being caused early on. Here's the idea behind this verse. two main points. Marriage is a vineyard in bloom, and it needs time and protection to reach harvest. So right, we want to enjoy our marriage. We want to see our marriage become fruitful. We want to see fine grapes pulled, and this, I know this frustrates some of you from some of your denominational backgrounds, but we want a marriage that ultimately produces fine wine. We desire that, but that takes time. It takes time and protection. One time when I lived in Dallas, I thought I'm going to buy, remember when you go to Lowe's and you get that little pod and it has one sprout on it, and I bought that for $9.99, and I was going to grow grapes. And I remember this was awesome, and I couldn't believe I planted it at the right time, and it took off. And I remember coming in, we've been married like 2 years. I'm like, I can't believe this. I'm a great husband because just within 2 years of marriage, I'm going to give you a vineyard. And it was like grapes started coming out, and I just remember this is awesome until in Dallas, everybody has a privacy fence around their backyard. I was just weed eating one day, going along the fence line, and thought, I'll just jump out. And when you weed eat, right, a little obsessive compulsive, I want to get as close to that as I can without actually hitting it. Nope. And it was done. Over. Vineyard was complete. Went, bought her a bottle of wine, and that was it. But marriage is a vineyard in bloom, needs time and protection to reach harvest. So all of us today, we're looking at our marriage as this vineyard, but here's the next part. The big foxes are easy to spot. The big foxes are what take you into counseling. The big foxes are, we've just had a train wreck. The big fox is the vineyard is completely destroyed. The vineyard is gone. But good counseling does what? Good counseling shows you the little foxes that started years back that led you to these big foxes. And the idea here is catching the little foxes with scrutiny and diligence. It's our security team at this church. You can tell. They're the guys. They're just always looking. They're always looking. Some of them, man, they're ready. They're hoping something goes down, right? We're hoping someone gets disruptive and I can pull out my laser gun on this guy and just threaten him, right? But they're always looking. They're not involved in a lot, but they're constantly walking around and checking things out. That's the idea behind this text, that you and I would, with time and protection, with scrutiny and diligence, we would be invested in our marriage and be identifying the little foxes and catching the little foxes before we're sitting somewhere with a marriage vineyard that's done in the big foxes. I've never dealt with little foxes, but when we first moved to the Ozarks, I dealt with another little critter. And we bought a house about 5 miles down T Highway 12 years ago. It was on a bluff overlooking Taneycomo, and we're in the Ozarks. We have arrived. This is awesome. We're laying down in bed one night, and the lights are off. We're about to fall asleep when all of a sudden we hear. I remember pausing for just a second. We were quiet, and then another couple seconds go by, and we hear. And Amy goes, "What was that?" And I, like a lot of men, I live by this philosophy that says, if you act like you didn't hear it, it's not really there. Third time we hear, it's closer and we feel it go by. Yeah, Amy goes, "What is it?" And I wanted to say, I think it's a sparrow. I think a little birdie's loose in the house. But I said, "Amy, I'm going to tell you what it is, but I need you to remain calm." She goes, "What is it?" I go, "Amy, I think it's a bat." Under the covers, she takes all of the covers for herself, leaving me fully exposed to the bat. I jump up, I race into the bathroom, I turn the lights on, I look out, I'm peering through this little crack in the door, feeling safe. Amy goes, "What are we going to do?" I said, "What are we going to do? I'm protected. You got a problem." But then I walked out and I caught the bat, relocated him to a forest preserve down the road. No, I murdered him pretty bad. I murdered him horribly. Have you ever tried to catch a bat? They're not like the easiest of critters to catch, and they all have, I think they have everything, salmonella, rabies, everything. You're like, oh, if I touch him, I'm going to die. And so, kill him. Well, months later, an exterminator comes out. And we get the news that there are 160 bats living in our attic. I know. First thought is, don't tell Amy. Because we'd be moving. We actually moved when we were moved out before the exterminator came. And here's the amazing part. This part just fascinates me. All 160 bats were getting in and out through a hole the size of my finger. And I said, well, just plug it up. Let's be done with it. He goes, well, the problem is you got about that much fecal material in the attic. I know. It was bad. And I never went up. And how many of you had an attic you haven't been in more than 5 years? Let me just see that. Yeah, and because we live by this idea, just don't go up there and everything's fine. I have a crawl space, and it's a door on the side of our house. How many of you have a crawl space you haven't been in over 5 years? Yeah, stay out of the crawl space, and everything will be fine. No, but what do we want to do? We want to go into the crawl space, and I do this every couple of months living in the Ozarks, and I'm looking for two things, moisture and termites. I want to catch it early. I don't want the guy coming out to my house and go, hey, I got him. I took care of it. The termites are gone. Like, whoo! He goes, but it's going to be about $20,000 to fix all the damage they've done. If I would have caught it early, if I would have dealt with it early, I wouldn't have this issue. I want to deal with the little fox, and many of us have to be bold enough to start having the conversations about the little foxes. See, I came from a church that focused on the biggies. We were always talking about the biggies. We were talking about, don't murder, don't have adultery, don't wear shorts, don't smoke, don't drink, don't chew tobacco, don't date girls that did any of that either. And that was our list. So long as you did that list, that's why we had Galatians, our series in Galatians, free in Christ. We're free. We don't have a list that we go by. We're free in Jesus. But it was that big list. I was 27 years old before Gary Smalley came into my life and taught me about the little foxes. He says, anybody ever taught you about your heart? And that which leads to this massive, chaotic problem that you're dealing with right here? I'd prefer not talk about those. I'd prefer not talk about those. Jesus dealt with big and little foxes. When you go to Matthew chapter 5, he deals with murder and adultery. He deals with anger and lust. And here's what it says. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. So we can all pat ourselves on the back and here as good Christians, I've not murdered anyone. However, be very careful, and anyone who murders will be subject to the judgment. It goes on to say this, but I tell you, let's get to the little fox. What causes the murder? What leads a person to the murder? I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. So we need to deal with the anger in our heart and the anger in our lives, the bitterness, the resentment. And for some of you in a second marriage right now, that bitterness and resentment towards an ex-spouse is the little fox you need to start dealing with. The anger and the frustration that you have with your parents, that's a little fox. I promise you, if you don't deal with it, if you don't resolve that anger, if you don't offer forgiveness, it will turn into a bigger issue and it will impact your marriage. It will begin to destroy the vineyard. This is something very interesting about the difference between a big fox and a little fox. I wish if anybody has a taxidermied fox, I'd love one. If you could just get it like on a remote control where the fox head moves like that, be awesome, because a little fox can't destroy a vineyard overnight. As we walk around the vineyard, we want to spot that damage early on before the whole vineyard is destroyed. And for some of you, you don't understand why being angry and hating your parents is a big deal, but it's going to destroy your marriage vineyard. It's a fox that has snuck in. It's a fox that you must deal with. It may be towards an ex-husband or an ex-wife. It may be towards a sibling. But you need to deal with that little fox. Then he goes on to say a few verses down in Matthew 5, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But Ted, before you pat yourself on the back because you've been faithful to Amy, Ted Cunningham, you look closely at your heart and if you're dealing with this issue. And then what are you doing to run the little foxes out of the vineyard? I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully, that's what we need to get out on the table. Looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. You've heard me tell this story, but when Amy was in bed one night, 7 years into our marriage, so 10 years ago now, reading that book on how men think. It's not a real thick book. You can read it in about a night. She asked the question, have you ever struggled with lust towards another woman? Let me teach you something. You start by acting as though you didn't hear the question. What'd you say? Have you ever struggled with lust towards another woman? Second tactic, you act as though you didn't understand the question. What do you mean? But then I knew we were going there. And you know what? For a week, she was in mourning in our home. She was finding discipleship and listened to everything she could. I can't tell you how many tapes of Beth Moore we listened to. Beth Moore said, Beth Moore said, Beth Moore, Beth Moore, Beth Moore. Right? Jesus, Beth Moore. And I said, we talked and had painful conversations about this little fox. But let me tell you guys something. Having that conversation about the little fox called lust, it was the greatest thing that ever happened in our marriage. There's a Hebrew term for it, bow, bow, chicky, chicky, bow, bow. When she said, I will be your fantasy. And this is exclusivity. I will be your only fantasy, Ted Cunningham. Now that I know this, we're going to take care of business. Yes, ma'am. You see, the little fox is what's preventing. Listen, this is why my technology is available to my wife and children. I will not allow something as stupid as a cell phone or a computer or a cable channel to destroy my marriage. I just won't allow it. I love when the cable company calls me and like, can we offer you these channels? Nah. No, I want to, they're free. Well, you know, nothing's free. Like, it's free. And I love, this person hasn't been through the type of training she needs to deal with this customer. Because I launch into, I will not sacrifice my marriage, and I get bold and passionate just to have some fun. I get bored. I just need to know that. So when I talk to these people, I said, I won't destroy my marriage with that channel. Excuse me? I go, I won't even let the little fox in. I won't let it in. And you can hear on the other end of the phone, she's flipping through that manual she got in training, right? Oh my, well, how do I respond? I got nothing. All right, sir, we're just going to let you go. So I won't allow it. I just won't allow it, right? When I go to the mailbox, and some of you are like, this is too much information. But when I go to the mailbox and get out the catalogs, we get roughly 400 to 600 catalogs a day in our mailbox. I never look through them. And some of them are pretty expensive. Like I throw away the real expensive ones that'll cost me a lot of money if Amy finds something in them that she likes. Those get thrown away, but I don't go through them. I'll scan them sometimes and say, hey, Victoria's Secret. I'm just going to shut that one right up and throw it. And I immediately, you know what I do when I get the mail? I walk right into Amy and go, here you go. You're like, Ted, you are ridiculous. This is it's just a little fox I don't want to deal with. And just by the way, when you start dealing with that, you know why I'm tempted as a man, like men in here are tempted, but you know why I don't thumb through that catalog? Because I've enjoyed my wife that week. I'm telling you, for some of you who don't want to have this conversation, it's a great conversation to have. Be open and honest. But there are some of you who are fully addicted. And so you're dealing with addiction right now. And just like neurochemical tolerance, for the same reason an alcoholic no longer gets drunk on one beer and it takes a case of beer and then it takes, adding hard liquor into that. It's the same thing that happened with pornography. You got started and you fell for the question, or you gave yourself the answer, this isn't hurting anything. It's no big deal. It's a little fox that turned into a fox that destroyed your vineyard. And I'm dealing with this right now with a friend of mine who had started here, and now, literally, thousands of people are impacted because he didn't deal with this little fox. When pastors don't deal with little foxes in marriage, it just destroys lives. Have the conversation. I've met with the couple that say, how? Can you explain to me, Ted, how a third person ended up in our bedroom? How did we get to a point where we invited a third person into the bedroom? It started with the little fox. We'll just spice up our marriage and we'll bring pornography into the bedroom. And you saw this as an opportunity to have something great in your marriage, but it was a little fox that was destroying the vineyard and you didn't even see it. My dad still questions why I would ever have to tell Christian couples, don't view pornography together, because it's something in our mind that says when we view it alone, sin. But if we view it to spice up our marriage, it's okay. No. It's sin, and sin always takes you farther than you want to go and keeps you longer than you want to stay. Deal with it. Deal with the little fox before it destroys lives. I met a couple this week, and I'll end with this, but this couple, sweet couple, he walks up to me at an event in Iowa City, Iowa, and he walks up, he says, you don't stop doing what you're doing. He says, you keep it going. And he was really passionate. His name's Lloyd. And I'm like, all right, Lloyd, I will. He goes, let me tell you something. Everything you're saying that comes from God's word, it's true. And he was one of these passionate, you do it, you keep doing it, you keep saying it. And I always love asking guys who've been married a few years, tell me about your marriage and the secret to a smoking hot marriage. And Lloyd invited me into his marriage story. And here's what I learned. I got to walk through it. I brought some pictures to show you. This is a picture of Lloyd in 1945 in a bunker in France. And he was smitten. I mean, it was young budding love with this young lady named Jean. And he said, man, I was head over heels. I wanted to marry her, but I had to go to war. So he said, whew, I would go. I couldn't wait to get back from whatever we were doing, get to that bunker, and it was usually at night, and I would write her a letter. And here's what he told me, and I think this is a great secret for all of us, and it fits perfectly with what we're talking about today. He said, let me tell you something. Everything was on the table. Every conversation. And I just want to, for the teenagers in here, I just want to help you. That's a pen right there, okay? And that's a notebook. He said, man, I just put all of my thoughts and all of my heart. And he said, Ted, there was nothing hidden. I just poured out what I was thinking and feeling. And this is something cool they did. I just wanted to throw this in there. He didn't give me this picture, but I stole it after he pointed it out to me on my phone. He asked me to pull out my phone. Can you show me a picture of stars on there? And I pull up the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. He said, before I left, we picked this star. It's the star that's circled right here, that yellow star, the yellow circle around the star. We picked that star, and we just said, that's going to be our star. And the ladies are going, oh. He said, but it was just great. Every night I'd come back. As I wrote the letter, I just kept looking up to the star, knowing she was looking at it too. Bam, bam, chicky. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that's a brilliant thought, and they came up with that on their own. But that was their star. And he said, and I would just write her letters. I poured everything out, and then she would write me back. Now, here's what's fun about writing letters during World War II. There was actually a whole department of the military that would read every single soldier's letter. I would have loved that job. And their job was to censor the letters and to cut out things that shouldn't have been on there. And look at it. So he lets me read one of the letters, and you can see a piece that was cut out by one of the censors. Just don't want that information going out. And Lloyd's like, it was probably pretty good stuff, too. And just so you know, he couldn't bring all of his letters to me, but he said, can I just show you one box of a few of the letters that I wrote, Gene? I said, I'd love to see it. And so this is a few of the letters that he let me read. And he said, let me tell you something. This is our life. There was no stone left unturned. We dealt with it all. We talked about it all. This is, to me, the secret. Guarding your marriage. Get to harvest. Because here's a picture of Lloyd and Jean, 69 years of marriage. And I was so grateful that they were able to come to a marriage conference and learn something from me. That's a joke. He got nothing to learn from me. Man, this man is walking with Jesus. He loves this woman. And this was the best part. I didn't get a picture of this. I'm so frustrated with myself that I didn't. But they have matching canes. They walked out together just in love. And I told Amy, I came back, I said, I can't wait for that day. Have you seen the commercial with the folding canes that fit in the purse? I said, I want 2 of those. When we're done eating, we're going to pull them out. And off we go out of that restaurant. Would you pray?